The decline of Henry VIII was one of the most gruesome in history. He lived in constant pain. He lived with wounds that never healed, and flesh that rotted beneath his royal attire, a stench so foul servants feared standing near him. His health collapsed so fast, paranoia consumed his mind and soul. This is how the Golden Prince fell into one of the darkest downfalls history has ever seen. We all know Henry VIII as the king with 6 wives, and the face on every history poster. But the truth? His final years were more like a horror film than a textbook. We're talking about a king so fat, he had to be lifted with mechanical devices, a body rotting with disease. Servants could smell him from rooms away, and a death so humiliating. His own coffin didn't want him. Today, we uncover the horrible death of Henry VIII, a story so grotesque it was hidden for centuries. He was born into royalty as a golden prince, but ended as a broken king. Henry VIII was born in 1491, tall, athletic, red-haired, and extremely handsome. Ambassadors bragged no prince in Europe could compare, but the man who once was the perfect Renaissance king ended his life in a nightmare. The turning point came in January 1536, a jousting tournament, one of the king's favorite events. Henry VIII charged down the tilt yard in glittering armor. Then, his horse stumbled, tripped and fell. Both the king and the beast crashed to the ground. The king was crushed, knocked out cold for 2 hours. But when he woke, Henry VIII was never the same. The accident left him with a leg wound that never healed. It became a festering ulcer, oozing constantly, rooms filled with its stench. The smell was so strong, servants fainted. Courtiers stuffed perfume-soaked cloths to their faces just to endure the king's presence. And worse, historians believe the head injury triggered paranoia, rage, and violent mood swings. The Golden Prince was gone. In his place, a paranoid tyrant. His body betrayed him. Henry VIII's trim 34-inch waist swelled to a staggering 54 inches, wider than a refrigerator. He weighed over 400 pounds. The average man then? Barely 140 pounds. What was the king's diet like? What did he eat? Around 5,000 calories. Every day, roasted pigs, towers of pies. 200 cooks worked daily, serving 800 dishes to his household. Henry VIII personally sampled dozens at every meal. He believed food had power: swan for grace, venison for the hunt, oysters for the bedroom. He stuffed himself as if food could cure him, while his body was breaking down. Meanwhile, his ulcers worsened, bandages soaked with pus. The odor carried into rooms away. Servants drew straws just to see who would dress him. Being near Henry VIII was punishment in its own. Back in the 1500s, Henry VIII had 6 wives. 2 of them, Anne Boleyn and Catherine Howard, were executed by Henry himself. Anne Boleyn was one. Before her own death, she was forced to watch her brother. And 4 other men get executed, crimes everyone knew were false. Catherine Howard was the other. Only a teenager when Henry VIII married her. Disgusted by his aging, rotting body, she sought comfort elsewhere. When Henry VIII found out, he passed a new law. Anyone who married the king had to confess their past, or be charged with treason. Paranoia consumed him. Secret passages, spy networks, guards everywhere. He slept with weapons at his bedside, crossbows within reach. He even spied on his own daughters, convinced they were plotting against him. By the end, Henry VIII turned his court into a surveillance state, where one wrong word meant death. Witnesses swore that Henry VIII was haunted, talking to empty chairs, shouting at ghosts. At banquets, he screamed at visions of Anne Boleyn, laughing at him from beyond the grave. Courtiers sat frozen, terrified. By the 1540s, Henry VIII was falling apart. Skin yellowed, face swollen, eyes sunken and bloodshot. He could barely walk. His body reeked of decay, no matter how much perfume drowned it. On the outside, royal velvet. Underneath his garments, a walking corpse. January 28, 1547, the king finally passed. Henry VIII died at 55 years old, his body ravaged by infection, legs rotting with gangrene, organs failing. He was so heavy, it took 6 men just to turn him in bed. He gasped for air, whispering the names of his dead wives, begging for forgiveness. Archbishop Cranmer held his hand. Henry VIII gave one final squeeze. Hours later, the most feared king of England finally passed away. Death didn't end his humiliation. His corpse decomposed at terrifying speeds. At his funeral, the coffin swelled, bursting open, leaking foul, stinking fluids, the air reeking of rot. In the chapel, dogs were seen licking what dripped onto the floor. The man who once claimed divine right, reduced to food for animals. Even his burial was chaos. The coffin, so large it barely fit the grave. For years afterwards, people whispered of strange noises and rotten smells seeping from his tomb. Henry VIII was buried beside Jane Seymour, the only wife who gave him a son. That son, Edward VI, became king at just 9 years old, but ruled only 6 years. Sickly all his life, Edward passed away from tuberculosis and infection, dying at just 15 years old. Henry VIII spent his life fighting for a son to secure his dynasty. But with Edward's death, that dream collapsed almost instantly. After Edward's death, Henry VIII's legacy was passed on to his daughters. Mary I tried to undo his reforms. Elizabeth I created stability and led England into a golden age. But Henry VIII himself? His portraits show a strong monarch, wrapped in royal robes. But the truth? A man rotting alive, feared by many, loved by none. In his final years, Henry was carried from room to room, paranoid, broken, and barely human. The death of Henry VIII proves one thing: no amount of power can stop mortality. Henry VIII, the king who changed England forever, ended up as nothing more than a bloated corpse. His coffin bursting open, leaking after death. Humiliated in death as in life. History may polish his image, but the truth? Henry VIII's downfall is one of history's most grotesque warnings about power, pride, and decay.